we have to talk about SQL Server now?
You know, I'm up in the air on it.
All about Atlanta Braves, please? Yeah, please. Please.
Let's see. David
No Braves.
Justice, Tom Glavine.
So you
Who
could say
else?
Greg
Otis
Maddox.
Nixon. Otis Nixon.
Yeah,
Greg
you could say
Maddox.
Greg Maddox, but I consider him a Cub. So
Okay, fair
go
enough.
with that.
Fair enough. I just remember like the sort of the glory days of the Braves when they made it to the playoffs, but not the World Series every year for like a decade. Lost.
Hey, they won once, right? They won once. I mean, hey, at least you
Barely.
won one. At least you're not the Denver
Barely.
Broncos, right? Or the Minnesota Vikings.
Or the Cubs up until last year.
No, see, we never got there, right? So, I mean,
True.
1945,
Well, I
so it
mean,
was a
you
whole
got
bunch
to
of people.
playoffs. You just didn't get to.
Like growing up as a kid, I never wanted to see them win the World Series. I just wanted to see them, like, win the pennant. I just wanted to see them. That was the big thing for me. It's like I just
You
wanted
just
to hear them
place.
say the Cubs win the pennant. That I mean,
Yeah.
that was it.
You just wanted
Winning
like Cubs in October.
I got to see him a couple times, 84,
Yeah.
89, 03, right? I mean, but man, winning it all, that's ridiculous. So I'm listening to the game yesterday, and on the bumpers before, coming on commercial breaks, coming in and out, world champion Chicago Cubs, and it's like so foreign to me. It's just
Yeah, right. You're like, what
it
planet am I on?
it doesn't make sense. It's like, wait, but I dreamt all that. That didn't actually happen.
Yeah, it's nuts.
And we just lost everybody. I mean, like, it was
Yeah, it was a rough off season for you.
bye. No. I mean, not our team is we're pretty same, but I'm talking about on the webinar. Everyone's
Oh.
just checked out.
Oh, yeah, checking
Yeah,
out. Nah, screw this. Baseball idiots.
I know, right? Foolish. See, this is what happened when Brent Ozar decides to go to San Francisco and see some Google Cloud keynote.
You know, we need a babysitter. We need an adult, clearly. Because left to our own devices, we'll just talk about silly crap all day.
Yeah, and now my wife's texting me.
So don't you know I'm in office hours? Well then,
I know. She does.
what a
She
creep.
absolutely does. But that's
What
all
a
right.
creep.
Yeah, no radio headphones.
Asking you to tell me hi.
Eric says hi.
Yeah. Hi, Richie's wife.
Please buy some wine infused coffee, please. Thanks.
Seriously, that sounds like a good deal. You get wine and coffee for the same
Isn't
price.
Tara the adult? No.
She would talk about other things for a while. I think. Maybe. I don't know.
No,
All right.
I guess it depends if we're drinking or not.
What do you think is in here? You can take bets on what is in here.
Vodka. Oh, and it's 12:17. We better start
Yeah.
answering questions.
You should. All right. Let's just work from the top down because I'm lazy and I don't feel like skipping around. Blah, 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 blah. Anyway, Clark asks, I'm not going to try to pronounce that last name. I'm just going to call you Clark Ginger. I'm configuring a SQL Server 2016-64 Enterprise instance. His previous DBA, the guy who presumably he took over for, left this value set to 256 gigabytes on a server that has 512 gigabytes installed. What would I set it to? Well, it would depend on a couple few things that you take into account when you're setting max memory on a server. If you have goofy other services installed on there, like SSIS, AS, or RS, you might need to bump SQL Server's memory down a little bit to accommodate those. If you have multiple instances on there, you may need to bump it down to accommodate those. And if you have a failover cluster where it is active, and you might need to have another SQL Server instance fail over to that node, I would probably set it a little bit lower. But if it's a standalone or if it's never going to have any company on there, I would probably set that to about 475 or 480 gigs to start and just kind of see how things go. Usually when you have a server with that much memory on it, you're trying to account for a fair amount of data. And so when you run CheckDB and other tasks that get pretty big memory grants and require a lot of memory to run, you can end up in some trouble if you set max memory too high. I had a failover cluster that would fail every weekend when CheckDB ran on a 4.5 terabyte database. So really just setting max memory down a little bit lower to 480. Solved it. It was set to 500 before that. So
We could have fun with this, right? So you could
could.
say, hey, roll 25 D20 and then add it up, and then that could be your max number, because that sounds about what this guy did, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's totally random. 256
half.
Because...
Well, it's half. It's exactly half.
But why, right?
I don't know. I don't know. I wasn't there. I didn't ask him. If I was there, I would have had questions, but no one was there.
I still like my D20 idea, right?
Your D20 idea is not wrong. It's just, he had a pretty good roll, I would say. Oh, here's a funny question. Alex asks, if we have enabled auto-create statistics for a database and are doing index rebuilds, do we need an additional SQL agent job to create statistics for a database, or is it okay to allow SQL Server to take full responsibility of... Okay, so here's the thing. When you auto-create statistics, that just means that if you have a column that's not the leftmost lead column in the key of an index, whether it's clustered or non-clustered or whatever else, that means if you run a query where you want to look at that column, but it's not in an index like that, SQL will generate a separate statistics object that's just a histogram on that column by itself. So if your where clause is like, select blah blah from table where, unindexed column equals something or greater than, less than something, SQL will usually go ahead and create some statistics on that column so it can make a better guess about what that where clause is going to produce. So you don't have to go and automatically create statistics based on that. You are probably going to want to have an update statistics job, and you're probably going to want to scale that rebuild stuff back a little bit, because this was, I don't know if you know this, but you've wandered into sort of a wasp nest of anti-index rebuild sentiment with Brent Ozar Unlimited. We prefer update statistics jobs to index rebuilds, because index rebuilds, as the great Michael J. Schwartz says, are a tremendously expensive way to update statistics. I would just mention that offhand.
Yeah, and I don't think there's anything to worry about having SQL Server control the statistics creation or anything like that.
Nope.
I think only a handful of times in my career I've actually had to create statistics on a column or multiple columns or something.
Yeah, and it's always, some weird kind of statistic like multi-column or filtered. It's never been like, oh, I just need a statistic.
Yeah.
Unless it was like something weird with an index view where it was not doing its job.
Yep,
Anyway.
That's exactly right.
SQL 2012 SP configure remote admin connections 1. Do you recommend having this on by default? Yes, absolutely. That is the remote DAC. That is your VIP entrance, your lifeline to SQL Server if you ever can't connect via more traditional methods like Management Studio or RDP or the application. Get to go in there, run SP who is active a whole bunch of times and see what's going on. So yeah, turn that thing on. Unless you have some crazy security concern.
We should have like different names for all these different features. Like that's the velvet rope, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Is the bouncer. All right, let's see here. David asks, I have taken over for a server. Oh, there's your problem. You're not a server. You're a human being, Silly. And I see that maxstop has been set to 1. I have tried anything over 1, and the server just locks up. What would be your first move to troubleshoot this? Cost threshold is set to 100. Jeez Louise. Sounds like you have some CPU issues over there. That's one of those things where I would need to know a lot more, like how many CPUs and cores you actually have in there and what kind of application you have in there. Because that's SharePoint.
That's it. What's your app? That's the big question.
Yeah. It's SharePoint or one of those other ding-dong applications. You have to leave maxstop set to 1 or else they just go all on you. So I just be careful of that. Setting cost threshold to 100 doesn't matter if you have maxstop set to 1. It's a query could cost $1 billion query bucks and it wouldn't go parallel.
So I do have a special name for SharePoint, and that's SharePointless, because that's what I feel like when I deal with it.
My daughter would call it SharePoop. So that's that. Anyway, Brian asks, how often had you had to deal with Kerberos authentication issues? Double hop stuff. No? Okay. Yes, please blog about it and shoot us or me an email when you have completed that blog, because if I find it to be of value, I will send people to it constantly if they ask me other Kerberos authentication questions. I'll send them there blindly too. Like, all I have to do is hear the word Kerberos. Like, oh, this blog post. Same way I do with most other things. Oh, this blog post.
So here's a nice comment. I should not have done shrooms before this webinar.
Me either.
I'm just wearing one, right? So
Richie looks like stained glass. It's weird. I keep thinking that's my glasses. Anyway. Clark asks a non-SQL Server question. When you tell people what you do for a living, and you say it's a nerd-related activity to do a triple take with my tattoos. No, because usually the only people who ask me what I do for a living are doctors, and I'm already in their office because I have nerd sinuses, so they are not surprised at all. When they find out I work with computers, they're like, "Oh, geek, good job." Yeah. It's like, yes, you're here because you have a double XL nose that you somehow can't breathe out of. You have.
That's the best question.
A vacuum cleaner attached to your face and you can't breathe for some reason. Yeah, so there we go. That's that.
What does he look like he does? I mean, seriously? I mean,
I dress like a bouncer, so I get it.
I drive a subway train, man, you know?
Like,
It's like the worst Uber driver ever, right? I mean, it's like you don't want to get in Eric's car.
No, I wouldn't. Because I don't have a license. Whatever car I'm in is stolen. It's not a good sign for you.
I'm so sorry. I've gone totally off the rails here.
Yeah, it's all right. There's not that many questions. Just kidding. Let's see here. JH asks if we know of any free tools to download to view large flat files table like greater than 8 gigs, since Notepad and other common ones are unable to open. What do you use, Richie?
Ooh, it's been such a long time since I've had to do that.
I'm going to throw out something weird.
I can't think of anything at the top of my head. There was a couple special tools that I needed to, because I was doing like large data loads and things like that.
Yeah.
But I can't think of them off the top of my head because I haven't had to do things like that in such a long time because, well, we live in 2017 and these large files, they don't exist. We just have, a billion of them now as opposed to having one large file. So
sometimes. This guy apparently, JH, doesn't. So JH, what I would do, and I only know this because I have opened the Stack Overflow database with it, is a hex editor called HXD can open up large flat files. You'll have to deal with like the hex stuff in there as well, but you'll be able to look at other stuff in it. And it's free to download as long as you're on Windows, I guess. I don't know. I've never tried to download it for a Mac.
Yeah, that's my hex editor choice, actually.
Yeah, it's a nice one. I like that one. I just like the logo for it. Cool looking. Anyway, let's go on down here. There was a Guillermo Garcia asks, will hardware technology ever get fast enough that SQL performance issues are no longer a thing, even with bad code, bad indexing, and everything else? No. The thing about hardware is that it just responds. So you could write a terrible query, and the hardware will respond to that terrible query. That terrible query will use so much of that hardware that other things will just start going wonky. The other thing is that data just keeps getting bigger too. So at some point, sure, if you have tiny little, dingy little tables, a little 8 gig database or something, you could probably stick that on a S7 or iPhone and get pretty okay performance out of it. But if you have genuinely large data workloads, and hardware is never gonna make it so that you don't have to do any work. But interestingly, Microsoft is working on some stuff there was they started talking about it at PASS. And one of those things was adaptive query plans where the optimizer will start responding to feedback from query execution and change things in flight. Oracle's been doing it for years, which is awesome. Oracle's got the adaptive query thing down flat. So if you can imagine like where SQL, some parameter sniffing issue, SQL selects a little crappy little nested loops join plan, and then halfway through they realize that there's about 5 million more rows in play than they estimated, and it'll switch that over to a merge or hash join or something else more appropriate.
So it's no longer going to say, hey, you have 1 trillion rows in this query when you only have like 100?
No, it's still going to say that. It's just in flight. It's going to say, oh, we made a mistake. We'll do something else instead. We don't need a 250 gig memory. We just take a little couple gigs and do that. Anyway,
give it all the memory. Give it all.
Yeah. So you can certainly cover up a lot of developer sins and indexing laziness and bad code crap with hardware, but it's never a replacement. It's just a band-aid or bandage. What's the worst code you've ever seen written?
Who, me?
Yeah. What's like the crappiest code you've ever seen?
Usually they're written by DBAs. Yeah, I mean, I can't think of anything on the top of my head, but I've seen some pretty crappy stuff by DBAs.
Like queries or like
queries,
tasks.
Yeah,
like
queries.
Things like okay.
Tasks are pretty simple, right? I mean, it's usually because DBAs aren't used to diving into data. At least a lot of the ones that I've dealt with, because they're DBAs, right?
Right.
Hardware backups and all this other stuff. But you have to, when you're digging in really deep into stuff, especially large data sets, things just kind of blow up.
I'm with you on that. I've met several DBAs who can barely write a select query.
Yeah.
Like they'll get the order of like from and where and group by wrong regularly. Like they'll just mess that up. But they can do all sorts of cool stuff with their high availability and backups and all that. But when it comes to a simple query, they're like, "What do you join?" I'm like,
all right, you got the next question, because it's, for some reason, I have to let my wife in the house.
Oh, okay.
Got her key.
Right. Well, I'm not going to wait for you then. Let's see. Let's see. You may have answered this question before. How do you learn PowerShell on self-paced like books, videos you recommend? I don't know. I never really learned PowerShell all that well. I messed with it a little bit to get familiar enough to do a few things, but I didn't learn PowerShell. Mike Fal, FAL is a great blogger. He writes a lot about PowerShell. If you want to look at some cool PowerShell code, the DBA tools, PowerShell DBA tools have some good, good PowerShell code in there. I don't know if you call it good, regular code. And then, I want to say that a while back there was a Learn PowerShell in a month of lunches or something like that had a pretty good explanation of stuff. Also, there's some PowerShell newsletter that I used to get that would send out PDFs with all different PowerShell topics on it. Anyway, Richie's back, so I can stop with my fluff answers. Michael asks, did either of you have any customers affected by the Microsoft account outage? No, I didn't. We don't.
Oh, yeah, that did happen.
Not that. Yeah, it happened. I don't think we had anyone affected by it. At least no one that bothered us.
But we were affected with the S3 outage.
Yeah, that's true. We were. Eric asks.
That wasn't fun. Oh, and by the way, as soon as it went down,
yeah,
I saw right away because things started failing.
Yeah.
And then I had all these other people that I know started messaging me saying, "Is S3 down? Is S3 down?" I'm like, "Am I Amazon?"
You're the website. You're Richie. Is S3 down, Richie?
What? But Paste the Plan never went down. Never went down.
Let's see here.
Amazing.
Eric asks, not me, some guy who spells Eric wrong. My SAN said he is seeing high disk queue length, and he is blaming SQL servers. Can I trust my perfmon counters? Etc., etc. I would ask him what problem high disk queue length is causing for him, other than, it being on a graph somewhere. So I'd want to know what about disk queue length he thinks it was an issue for him. What's going on with that? Let's see here. I'm looking for a question that I can read.
Wow, we just found out that Erik could read. That's pretty cool.
I learned recently.
Good.
It was nice. Boy. Oh, well, we already answered that one. Guillermo asks another good question. Here we go. What's your strategy dealing with databases that store blobs? Do you move blob data files to a storage different than your regular data files are? I feel like they just waste disk space, which is optimized for regular data pages. I feel like you're right. Richie, do you have any input on the blob question?
Yeah, somewhere in the mid-90s, I think I put blobs in databases and learned that was not very good idea. They're there. They take up space. You're absolutely right.
And we need to edit PDFs in SQL.
I know, and then getting them in and out becomes a problem as well. So definitely store them on disk and then access them that way. Actually, I did a test not so long ago about putting blobs in DynamoDB, which ended up working, and it worked fine.
Really?
But then you pay for the storage costs associated with DynamoDB, and I'm like, do I want to pay more for that storage, or should I just pay less and put it in S3? So
it's a very good question.
So we just put a link to S3 there, and we read that, and we go get it, and Pace-A-Plan gets that stuff from S3.
It's a good idea. So, well, there's a post that Jeremiah wrote when he was still hanging out with us about getting blobs out of the database. I've always found pretty good about that. And my take on it is that, you should just store a path to the file in the database and then get that file some other way. Don't make SQL Server store your GIFs.
Yeah, and if you're really paranoid about what about my file? What if someone deletes it? Then write a process every night that reads it all and just figures it out if it's there or not. If you're paranoid, some of us aren't that paranoid. Who cares if it's there or not?
Especially about blobs, like unless you're dealing with like really sensitive financial or government or other documents that you need to have complete consistency on. Anyway, JH asks another banger of a question. When preparing to allocate enough space for a reindexing job, is it correct that it will need the same size space as its current index use size? Are you talking about the data file or the log file? The data file, I just sort in TempDB anyway, and then for the log file, I usually say about 1.5 times the size of your largest index. And that's only because you need to accommodate that largest index, and you might have other stuff going on at the same time. So I'd just give myself a little bit of slack on that. Anyway, does CheckDB affect performance on a high-volume database? It affects performance on just about any database. It's an intense task. And if you do physical only, it takes up CPU and memory, and it reads everything from disk, and it does a whole bunch of crap. And yes. So the answer is yes, absolutely. This is why a lot of people choose to offload CheckDB so that they don't have to deal with it affecting their transactional data.
I see a good one somewhere there.
Yeah, which one?
VM.
You go ahead and read one.
I will read one, but that's it, Erik. I've had enough.
All right.
VM Architect won't give me more than 16 gigabytes of RAM. RDB is over 150 gigabytes. 4-core, 2014 standard. What do you say to that? Hey, you know what has more RAM? My phone! You want to put SQL Server on this?
I mean, my laptop has 32 gigs of RAM in it. The desktop that sits at my feet like an obedient dog has 128 gigs of RAM in it. Your VM architect, get that? I don't know where he got that title from. It won't give you more than 16 gigs.
Has 16 gigs of RAM.
You know.
Tablet.
Yeah, so I would just avoid him at all costs. He doesn't sound like a terrifically bright individual.
And it's really not a question of going physical. It's a question of this guy needs to get a clue about what SQL Server needs and how it performs. So it sounds like you're going to need to do a little bit of education on him or his superior to get the RAM that you need. There's some basic education needs to happen to understand that everything SQL Server needs, it needs to put in memory first. And every time you have too little, then it's doing a lot of this swapping all over the place. And that slows everything down.
Yeah. So Brent has a great post, Brent, called the Sysadmin Guide to SQL Server Memory. I'll grab the link on that, but that's where I would point him to. Sysadmin Memory. Should be in there. Should be the first result. If it's not, I'd be surprised. Yeah, there we go. So this is the post. Even though he is a VM architect, even though he, I guess, went to art school or something, and learned how to be an architect, he might be part sysadmin underneath. So I would send him to that link and say, hey, before I have to start punching you, please give me more memory. That's fun. All right. We have a few minutes left. Let's see here. Are page splits causing performance issues? No. No, they're not. Let's see. I know this is not a financial advisor session. My company is not paying for training or conferences. I am willing to pay out of pocket. If I pay myself, can I claim my expenses on tax return? I don't know. I would just get a new job. I think it would be less painful to get a new job than to deal with the IRS on that.
You could. I think you can claim that. I'm not sure if you need to create your own organization or not, because I always kind of had my side thing going down, so everything was kind of funneled through that if I paid for anything. So talk to an accountant. And unfortunately, we don't do accounting talk here because we're not accountants, but your tax professional will have an answer for you.
I think we have time for one more question.
Just many tools.
Especially if I stall a little bit and read it real slow. Michael asks, Michael tried to sneak this one in via email, and since he's a diligent attendee, I'll let him get in the last question on this one. He wants to know we're trying to debug a deadlock that happened on a couple delete queries. They got off on a tangent about if there's a difference in the way locks escalate if you declare an explicit transaction within your stored proc, or whether the default auto commit works the same way. Does an explicit transaction have a higher lock mode? Does it do anything other than give you a mechanism to handle the rollback? Not in my experience. How about you, Richie?
Not that I know of.
Yeah.
I really haven't messed with that much. So I'll plead ignorance here.
Yeah. So I guess what I've observed, and this, I wouldn't take this as biblical truth. This would be a pretty good question for Stack Exchange, but I'll just give you a little bit of what I've observed. Is that no? The only thing that the declaring a transaction buys you, especially if it's a named transaction, is the ability to see in the transaction log where stuff happened, if you name it, and B, you can do the commit or rollback or, do some error handling within it. Other than that, though, I've never seen a lock escalation or lock duration difference unless someone forgets to commit or roll back a transaction, in which case all heck could break loose. No, as long as you put the begin tran and the rollback are committed in the same place that it would happen automatically, I don't think that would have a different outcome in it. So
I think we could go one more. Because we started late.
Yeah. Okay.
So I have one last one.
Okay.
And it's probably fit right within the 1 minute we have left.
Okay.
We have several clients asking about encrypted data at rest. Any experience, comments on transparent data encryption or any other approaches you have seen success with?
Are you asking me, or did you have a good answer for that?
No, I'm asking you, dude.
Oh, you're asking me.
Database expert.
I am. Oh my God, I always forget. So TDE, it's interesting, but it does not encrypt. It only encrypts data at rest. It does not encrypt data at flight.
Mm-hmm.
So it takes a whole lot of software engineering work to have end-to-end encrypted data. And it also, prior to 2016, breaks a few cool things like instant file initialization and whatnot. So that's what you get out of TDE.
Well, TDE does do the encryption. I've used TDE, not from an admin perspective. It works, but there are gotchas around the certificate and encryption keys and all this other stuff. When you do restores, before you implement it, you probably want to do some test restores because that becomes more complex as well.
Any high availability, mirroring, log shipping, availability groups, those all get weird with TDE. You got to make all sorts of concessions. Well, not concessions. You just have to plan for it. Really.
That's exactly right. So. I've seen it work. It adds additional overhead to your CPU usage as well.
Yeah. It takes a while to happen depending on the size of the database.
Yeah, and I've seen large data. Yeah, I've seen large databases have it. Multi-terabyte databases have TDE there, but you need to do your own testing on it. I'm not going to. Your situation is unique. Your experiences are unique. I would say go into a test environment, start running some tests, see the gotchas, do your restores, run some load tests, do some perf on it, and see if it will work in your environment.
Yeah, sounds good to me. Also, just be aware if you're on a version of SQL prior to 2016 and you're compressing your backups, it's going to stop working too. So all sorts of fun stuff in there. You can still do row or page compression if you're still into doing that, but
yeah, but it is important, right? Because when you do your backups, that data is not encrypted.
But you can. They do have encrypted backups.
Yes.
Which is separate.
How many of us are actually doing that, really?
Oh, 0%. 0% of anyone. I did a demo of it once for a client. Because they wanted it, and you can do it with all the Hallengren scripts. I'm sure you could do it with Minionware too. I've just never tried. But just to prove it worked. I was like, oh, I'll do this, and I hated every minute of it.
Yeah, there's a lot of hoops that you have to jump through TDE. But if it is a requirement at your location, then it's in the box. Might as well use it. So. There's some benefits that are there, but try it on your own. Start to get comfortable with it because there are some things there that are a little bit wonky. Some things you thought worked kind of don't work the same way when you turn on TDE.
Mm-hmm. All right. I think we did a good job of making up for the fact that we started a few minutes late.
I think so too. Although we don't look as pretty as Brent, I think the two of us together equal like a quarter Brent. I think
maybe if you got on my shoulders.
Yes.
Quarter Brent.
Maybe you could have the coffee and I'll have the kind bar, and we'll be good.
You know what? Wait, who gets the wine?
We both get the wine.
Oh, okay. So I'll get. So oh wait, the coffee and wine combo.
Coffee and wine combo. But the question is are we splitting the wine case in the middle, or is someone going to get an additional bottle or whatever?
You get the part of the bottle that has the cork in it, and I'll just take the part that has the wine.
Well, I'm gonna give you a couple extra bottles because I want to keep your wife happy. So, because I know she'll probably drink most of it.
Yeah, usually. I mean, she has to put up with me, so all alcohol is welcome. All right. Anyway, thank you all for attending and listening to me and Richie babble incessantly. I'm gonna go refill my coffee and try to get the rest of this Optimum nutrition off my shirt. Anyway,
Time to have lunch.
Thanks, guys and gals. Catch you next week.